A warm good evening to everyone. Numbers enlighten, numbers empower, and numbers elevate. Numbers can help make sense of modern India. India is a country of wonder and beauty, of idealism and sacrifice, of extraordinary leaps and faith. I, Prachi, student of BA Honours in Political Science from SGTB Khalsa College, University of Delhi, is going to present a presentation on population paradox in India. And in this presentation, we will understand how the numbers and data will tell us a wider and a better picture of India's increasing population. So here we go. First of all, I'll be stating the objectives of my presentation. First, I'll be discussing about the current population status of our India. Second, I'll be discussing about the reasons behind increasing population of India. Next, we'll be understanding the two heroes of my presentation, which is demographic transition and the demographic dividend. Next, I'll be discussing the ways in which demographic dividend of India can be reaped through four sectors: viz, education, health, skill development, and gender sensitization. And at last, I'll be showing you all the small survey that was being conducted by me through online means. Horrifying numbers. We all have heard about the horrifying numbers of the increasing population of our India. The horrifying numbers are from the United Nations Population Fund, and the current population of India is Sawa Crore, as we say, according to Worldometer elaboration of the latest United Nations data. Also, we know that India ranks number 2 in the list of the countries and dependencies by the population after China. Also, according to the World Economic Forum report of International Monetary Fund, India is expected to surpass China as the world's most populous country. So, the statistics and the facts are very alarming. But here I present a very optimistic view upon the India's population. First, we'll have to understand that why the population in India has been increasing. I have divided the reasons of the population increase into two. First is the technical reason, and next is the social reasons. In the technical reasons, birth rate is greater than the death rate. That means the rate at which the children are born is more than the rate at which the people die. Next is the increasing fertility rate. In a very simple and lucid terms, fertility rate is the rate of the number of children born per woman. And the social reasons of the increasing population also includes the child marriages that is still prevalent in our societies, and that's a major evil. And next is the early emergency. The next reason is son supremacy. And all this boils down to poverty and resultant illiteracy. There's a sheer cycle between the poverty and the illiteracy in our India. Now, let me introduce to the famous demographer and an economist, Thomas Malthus. Thomas Malthus wrote an essay on the principle of population in 1798. Malthus specifically stated that human population increases geometrically while the food production increases arithmetically. आसान भाषा में ह्यूमन पॉपुलेशन जो है उसका जो ह्यूमन पॉपुलेशन इंक्रीज होने का दर जो है वो ज्यादा होता है देन द फूड प्रोडक्शन रेट. Consequently, the production will be lesser and the population will decrease, and there will be the issues of food scarcity, according to Malthus. So Malthus had a very pessimistic view about the increasing population. But Malthus was severely criticized by the modern economist. Due to rise of the Industrial Revolution, Green Revolution, and globalization, we have seen that the grains and the production of grains have drastically shook up the levels, and there has been seen a record high increase in production in the Green Revolution in our country itself in 1960s. Now, let me introduce to the two heroes of our presentation, which is the demographic transition and the demographic dividend. Now, what does this demographic transition means? It refers to the nearly ubiquitous change countries undergo from the regime of the high fertility rates and high mortality rates to the low fertility and low mortality. In a very simple lucid terms, when our India got independent initially in the 1947 or in 1950s, due to lesser improvement in the health sector, there used to be more mortality rates. That means and there were mortality rates at that time. But at this 21st century, we are at a situation when there are low fertility rates because of the awareness among the masses of the smaller nuclear families, and also the low mortality rates due to improvement in the health sector. and consequently it leads to the baby boom. That means, for example, if there is a high fertility rate in a country, that means it will result in increased births as compared to deaths, mainly due to improvement in the health sector or due to use of vaccines, antibiotics, safe water and sanitation. So as a result, babies born in such a boom, for example, in case of India, it was in 1990s or 2000s, then babies will be reaching working age within a period of 15 to 25 years. So there comes the demographic dividend comes into the picture. According to United Nations Population Fund, the demographic dividend is the economic growth potential that can result from shifts in population age structure, mainly when the share of the working age population is larger than the non-working age share of the population. That means people who are not working, such as the elderly people, which is 65 and older, or the children or maybe less than 14 years of age, which are dependent, is less than those who are actually working and contributing to the economy. So that's how the demographic transition and demographic dividend is. So using these two terms, now let me introduce you to David Bloom, who is a very renowned economist and a demographer also. In his research paper, Population Dynamics in India and the Implications for Economic Growth, he has mentioned that India's demographic changes are also manifest in its age sector. In 1950, India had a very young population with many children and few elderly. That means in 1950, the baby boom used to be happened. Now, let me show you practically his working paper and how he has shown the evolved nature of the age structure of our country. Now, this is the working paper of David Bloom, and here we go to his population dynamics. In 1950s, he has shown that the population pyramid of India looked like this, looked like a pyramid. As such, the base of the pyramid is very wide. That means there used to be more children than the elderly people. But as we move forward with the time in 1970s, 1990s, and 2000s, the base is shrinking. And the base is shrinking and the central part is more widening. That means we can see the increase in the working age population that is happening in our country. Let me also show you another population pyramid that is on the Worldometer website. That is very interestingly, it shows the real-time status of the population pyramid. As we can see from here, the widest area in this pyramid from around age 18 to around age 33. And in this phase, the maximum number of people are there. So this is data which needs to be tagged to reap the benefits of the demographic window that is being opened in our country. Now, demographic window that is opening in our country will not automatically be reaped. We need to take some actions. And here I present the 4 growth driving sectors in which we can help to reap the benefits of the demographic dividend. These health sectors are education, health, skill development, and gender sensitization. Moving forward with education. Rukmini S. in her recent book, Whole Numbers in the Heart of the Truth, quotes that India's population growth has slowed much faster than earlier anticipated. But old narratives persist, and no one seems prepared for what the generations of the future will need. We are faced with the many challenges in education sector. And here I present the statistics from the Ministry of Education, Government of India, in which there is a gender parity index, and the poor performing states are such as Gujarat, Bihar, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. And in this pupil teacher ratio, Bihar and the Jharkhand are the worst performance. So the statistics are really alarming. Moving forward with the challenges of the education sector in India, there are many challenges such as low learning outcomes, low rote learning, less job-oriented education or less vocational courses, lack of funds, and a very serious problem known as brain drain. That is, brain drain means that the working professionals or the highly qualified professionals are moving towards the foreign countries for the better economic prospects. Lack of proper implementation of the schemes and policies. So let us take an example of the Right to Education Act, which was enacted in 2009 and implemented in 2010. So Pratham is an NGO, non-governmental organization, which releases an annual status of education report every year that reports the findings on various parameters related to the provision of education in rural areas. And the statistics and the results just blew my mind. Attendance in the government schools is just 72%. And the children in class 3 who were able to read a class 2 textbook fluently is just 27%. I mean, a child who has just passed class 2 and promoted to class 3 cannot even read the class 2 textbook fluently. It's just 27%. And it's a high time that we do something. I mean, what to do now? Enough of the ranting of the challenges, enough of the ranting of all the problems that are associated with our education system. But we need to take some actions to reap the benefits of the population and make our population actually a blessing than a demographic disaster. So according to the study done by Frey and Options using World Bank data, the automation as a threat is lesser in India than in China. Therefore, this is the demographic advantage that India has. Therefore, the accessibility of the basic schooling, basics needs to be strong. Focus on a vocational education, training, and the secondary level, and the existing labor force needs to be upskilled and reskilled. And here comes the phenomena of lifelong learning, where the learning does not stop at a particular age, and there has to be the reskilling done periodically. Now, with this digital and globalized world across the world, we have now the digital arena, and the need for digital literacy training becomes very important. Now, I would like to highlight one of the policy of our government of India, which is the Prime Minister Kaushal Vikas Yojana. And in this, the digital literacy training is being promoted through setting up a digital literacy training centers across the India. And the implementation and the more implementation of this existing program is required. A. Srija, in her working paper of the Azim Premji University, also recommended that the states need to speed up their efforts and focus exclusively in the vocational streams, information and communication technology, and the practical training. The youth should be seen as a job potential from the streams that they're pursuing to curb dropouts at the secondary level. Also, Harsh Mandar, a former member of NAC, in his interview with Sunset TV recommends that the high investments for the most difficult to reach children should be made. And what is this most difficult to reach children? For example, investments in constructing the residential schools for the homeless children. So that needs to be taken care in our mind. Moving forward with the second sector, which is healthcare. Indrani Gupta recently wrote a working paper in 2020 titled "Relying on Serendipity is Not Enough." So she quoted that the lesson from the COVID era would be for India to immediately start with the much delayed health sector reforms, beginning with a substantial jump in the public health financing, and if impact of future epidemics and pandemics are to be minimized. Healthcare is not challenge-proof in India. It also has its challenges and issues. Here, it is explicitly shown in this graph, which is from Niti Aayog, that shows that the number of government hospital beds in India per 1 million population is decreasing year by year, and expected by 2041, it will decrease even further. Next challenge is also the number of hospitals per bed 10,000 population. Here we are, the source of this graph is WHO itself. And in this graph, we are comparing different countries with India, and India is the least in it. Also, there's another threat which is known as urbanization. So according to World Bank data, the people living in urban areas grew from 18% to 1960 to 30% in 2008. And in this 2021, it is increasing further. But the urbanization comes with its own price, which is resulting in tobacco consumption, patterns of nutrition, hypertension and diabetes, etc. Now, what needs to be done in the health sector? I mean, population can be made a blessing. Education is done, but what is the fun of that education or the skill development if the labor or the working population is not physically and mentally fit? That means investments in health sector are the most crucial element of reaping the demographic dividend. India has also taken a significant step in this direction, and you must be aware about the National Rural Health Mission 2019, which seek to fill India's pressing need for a wider range of further investments in the health sector. Also, it has been found with the studies that the majority of the mortality rates were from the emergency cases. Therefore, our emergency wards of the hospitals needs to be well trained, and the health facilities and the motivated staff consistently available to provide care 24/7. I would like to draw the attention of this house towards the case of the Banda, a field visit undertaken to Banda district in Uttar Pradesh with the objective of accessing the utilization of the maternity services. So in this survey, it was found that there was a delay in referral and complacency on the part of the medical and the staff in detecting such pregnancies that may pose a grave danger to both mother and child if undetected. Therefore, to elevate these situations, Indian Journal of Community Medicines suggested that some short-term action plans needs to be addressed. For example, we talk about decentralization. Decentralization should not be limited towards the political arena, the public administration. Decentralization has to be implemented in health sector also. Localized plans such as primary health center level needs to be developed for registration, follow-up appointments, and timely referrals for the high-risk pregnancies to appropriate facilities, be it public or private. Now, here I coin a very interesting term, which is healthy budgeting. By healthy budgeting, what I mean is that India should allocate more number of funds towards the health sector in India so that the health sector is to be improved. Currently, India spends around 1.8% of its GDP on healthcare, whereas the USA spends more than 16.9%. Okay, that is to say as a developed country. But if we compare India with a developing country, which is Brazil, it also spends more than 9.5% of its GDP on health. Next is the PPP, which is public-private partnership. So there has to be a synergy between the public and the private sectors. In the arena of the liberalization, privatization, and globalization, the private sectors become very important. Therefore, the synergy has to be between the public and the private sectors in this area. Interestingly, we have just finished watching the Shark Tank India season 1, and there was a contestant which proposed a portable ECG machine. And I think those small scale inventions, those investments in R&D should be made so that these inventions come across the government authorities and they are being promoted. And that can be seen as a very instrumental thing in this direction. Now, malnutrition. So, Global Hunger Index 2020 by the Oxfam places India at the 94th spot among 107 countries. And the very serious and complex problem, main cause is the malnutrition and the child stunting, which can be seen, which is limiting our children's growth. So, these directions, I have a model of the Orissa district, district in Orissa, which is Angul, which is large geographically isolated tribal population and has periodic grievance redressal camps. It's set up in areas from the Anganwadi centers to provide ICDS services. So the localized plans, the decentralized plans, and the Anganwadi centers are being empowered and are actually doing something in this direction. Therefore, the community engagement and empowerment is the key. With this, we now move to the third sector, which is skill development, a major driver. One of all the major economists or the researchers such as Arya, David Bloom, Desai, Goli, and Pandey have theoretically argued that the demographic windows of opportunity alone cannot bring about an impetus to growth in the country. Demographic windows of opportunity just creates a supply side potential and cannot be realized unless the growing working age population skills have been enhanced and accommodated in the employment. Here I present you the study that was conducted by the Journal of Entrepreneurship United States, and it was found that the Indian business students are very enthusiastic about the startups and the skill-based courses. On asked that what type of businesses they want to launch, they replied as opportunity-based entrepreneurships, which are either export-oriented businesses or high-tech businesses, such as computer products or web designing. Also, I would like to tell you all that the services sector is the major driver of the growth in our India. And the service sector has the maximum contribution to the GDP of our country. Therefore, it needs to be tapped. Also, the entrepreneurship culture in our India is on a high increase nowadays. And there has been seen a greater focus, creativity, competition, and initiatives in our country. Now, skill development initiatives have been taken in our country by the government of India, but more implementation is needed. But as there are issues of non-realization of scheme targets, underutilization of allocated funds. Therefore, the states needs to speed up their efforts and focus exclusively on making school education more job oriented so that the students are job ready for the labor market and instilling more of the vocational streams, ICT, and practical training. Moving forward, at the globalized worlds we are in, here I introduce the term fourth industrial revolution that is being done by the working paper of A. Sirja and Azim Premji University. So, fourth industrial revolution is only about the application of digital technology into machines through robots, AI, which is artificial intelligence, big data, nanotechnology, advanced manufacturing, 3D printing. Now, this fourth industrial revolution can pose a serious threat. How can it be posed? I'll explain. Fourth industrial revolution in the cause of the artificial intelligence calls for the automation in manufacturing and adoption of labor displacing technologies. That means the artificial intelligence or the robots or the automation certainly replacing the labor working in the manufacturing sectors. Therefore, it will either replace the low skilled or unskilled labor could easily find job opportunities. So it can be pose a serious threat. To minimize the threats, I think the rapid technological evolution in this context needs to be done. Stipend driven courses, night classes, on the job classes for the upskilling and reskilling of the existing workforce can be envisaged so that they're able to upgrade their skills without loss of income. In this context of rapid technological evolution taking place in all spheres of life, we certainly need to focus on industry integrated job market oriented curriculum for India to be able to convert its demographic advantage into a demographic dividend. Here I present the most important sector that needs to be done. I mean, education is done, health sector is being improved, and the skill development is done. But what is the benefit of that increase in GDP if the gender sensitization is not in our society? That increased GDP is of no use if the men and women are not equal respect in our society. Therefore, gender sensitization helps in people in examining their personal attitudes, beliefs, and questioning of the realities of both the sexes. So, gender sensitization is a sort of a social construct, is a socially learned behavior based on the social expectation about how men and women should behave in a particular society. So, gender sensitization calls for the awareness among the people about gender sensitivity in a society. So, here comes the use of the social media hashtags and campaigns that can serve as a better platform to increase awareness about the gender sensitization. There should be a gender parity at workspace and equal wages be provided to both men and women. Now, I conducted a very small survey through Google Forms online one, and I received some 20 odd responses. So this is a direct survey conducted by me, and this is a direct data. So questions were asked such as, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the India's population reaping the benefits of the demographic window? And 85% of the people responded that yes, they are optimistic. Next, do you want to contribute to the increase in the economic growth of the country? And 100% of them said yes. I mean, the young minds of the country. And let me tell you that the respondents were between the age of 15 to 30 years. So that is a working age population also. And they're very enthusiastically wishing to contribute in the economic growth of our country. And I think government and authorities need just to provide opportunities to them. Also, these are some of the recommendation solutions by the respondents and by me also. So such as they call for the innovation and young minds, doing away with mechanical learning and giving hands-on experience to students to make people talk of population advantage and not to curse population for every problem. And promoting startup ideas, increasing employment, better transparency in the schemes of government for the benefit of the population. Therefore, let's play our cards right and give India the status of being the golden sparrow back. Because according to my perspective, the human population or the young and bright population should be considered as an asset, not a liability. Because I strongly believe that if the necessary action for once to educate and upskill our population, let's join our hands to make our nation a better place, to embellish our humans. So at the end, I would like to present few lines that goes like, चलो आज एक नई राह बनाएं, विश्व शिखर पर परचम फहराएं, शिक्षा के पर से अच्छा उड़कर भारतवर्ष का नाम बनाएं. Thank you so much and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Ms. Prachi. That was such a very commendable presentation from your end. And I'm sure that all the virtual attendees must have surely relished the session thoroughly and have taken in various academic and critical insights from the talk that you presented. So let us now proceed to the next segment where we would like you to address a few queries that were posted by some of our enthusiastic listeners in the chat box. So first question is by Ms. Nishtha Goyal. So Ms. Nishtha Goyal, if you are able to unmute yourself, you can ask a question to Prachi.
Hello, good evening, all. My question is this: you said illiteracy is one of the reasons for population increase, right? But according to the facts, census 2011, China's population is 94. China's literacy rate is 94%, whereas India's is still at 74%. Then why there is China tops in population proliferation?
Okay, that's a very good question. And I think in the starting of the presentation, I talked about how the Indian society works. And I think the working of the Indian society is very much different from the working of the Chinese society. And if we go by the concepts and what I meant about the poverty and illiteracy, and I can see a very direct relationship between the poverty and illiteracy. Because if the particular family is poor, economically poor, that means they will not be able to access the education, of course, and the lack of accessibility of their education will prone them to not to be job ready and not to be educated, and that results in illiteracy. And in return, illiteracy will lead to lesser job opportunities with them, because of course without education you cannot do job, of course, and that itself jumps into the situation of poverty. So therefore there's a direct relationship between the poverty and literacy that I observe here.
All right, well answered, Ms. Prachi. Now, the next question is by Ms. Purnima Sharma. And so, her question is, when we talk about pollution, climate change, the one major concern is the anthropogenic activities that the increasing population is causing. So, how do you see this angle? What are your views about it?
Okay. So urbanization is, of course, it has two sides. I mean, urbanization is also required at the same time. So that because as the economy develops, it moves from agriculture to the industrial to the services sector. So also urbanization is also required, but the urbanization should not be at the cost of the environment or the health of the citizens of the country, because urbanization also comes at the cost of the pollution, of course, the sedentary lifestyle, affecting the nutritional levels of the people. So it has both sides, I must say.
All right, Ms. Prachi. The next question is by Mr. Ajay Gupta. So, Mr. Ajay, if you're here, you can please go ahead with your question.
Okay, so Prachi, that was a very nice presentation that you have given. My question is just a simple one. Like you said that population is an asset, but don't you think that only educated and the people who could be employed can be termed as the asset, not the population can be termed as the asset, right? So how do you define that?
Yeah, of course. The population who are educated and upskilled is an asset, of course. So I think the population that is not educated or skilled needs to be educated, needs to be skilled, needs to be gender sensitized, so that it can turn up as an asset, not a liability. That's a very short answer.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Prachi. We will take one last question by Ms. Shubhi Singh. So, Ms. Shubhi, you may please go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Ms. Samriddhi, and congratulations to you, Prachi, for giving this wonderful presentation. My question is that, don't you think that rapid growth of population will reduce per capita level of education and health?
Yes, of course, it will. When there is an increase in population, the resources is being distributed across the population and the per capita levels is decreased. Therefore, to cope up with the situation, I think, as you talked about the increasing population, let me draw your attention towards the National Family Health Survey 2020, which is fifth in series, recent one. So in that, the fertility rate, which is 2.1, and the current fertility rate of India is 2.1, which is the replacement level. That means the under this 2.1 replacement level, the population will start shrinking. And I think the population increase is not a major issue now in our country. And I think this needs to be capitalized as early as possible, because we are at this stage that we had a replacement level of 2.1, and according to the statistics and the studies, the population of India will certainly start shrinking from this side.
Thank you, Ms. Prachi.
All right, thank you, Ms. Prachi, and thank you so much once again for that amazing talk. And you
Thank
have
you.
amazingly tackled all the queries in such a subtle way that I'm sure the listeners would be very much satisfied with the responses. So, congratulations again for that amazing session. Now, let us
Thank you so
proceed
much.
part of the event where I would like to request our guest teacher, Dr. Nachiket Singh, to pronounce his diligent views over the topic of her choice of Prachi and converse with all of us about the penetrative talk that Ms. Prachi gave us today. So, sir, we would request you to please come over with your remarks.
Uh, thank you, Smriti. And I mean, I'm at a loss of words actually. I mean, Siprachi has, surprised me, taken me by surprise so much, because I mean, I was not expecting, this dimension of the paper she would be, focusing on. I thought she will be focusing on more on the socio-political, aspect more, but it is. I mean, it turned out to be a totally different, well researched, very incisive, and so much empirical data she has used to, uh, present this paper. I'm extremely happy that this type of forum platform has enabled and encouraged students to come out with such research-based paper to be presented. Congratulations, Prachi. And
Thank you so much.
well, I will, reflect on the presentation in a very brief, but uh, again in a critical manner. And that's, of course, is the duty of teacher, mentor, and we will, show you the other dimensions which probably you could not, include in your paper. You talked about, the two heroes, that is demographic transition and demographic dividend, and focused entirely on that in a very, very, uh, able manner. I was expecting a little more of a demographic liability, because India, as a country, faces this huge challenge of demographic liability, which I will deliberate upon briefly later on. You have talked about the social sector. Of course, that's the two main social sectors: education and health, in a very, very elaborate manner. You even talked about the Odisha model, the Anganwadi and the women self-help group. And I come from Odisha, that's why I was pleasantly surprised by your, choice of state where you are. Actually, this is one of the successful, states in, delivering these services. Then you have talked about the PPP model. Yes, that's the way forward. I mean, the government cannot take the responsibility of, providing services to such a huge number of, the people, who are at the receiving end. So the public sector involvement is definitely something which you have suggested a welcome, step. Yes, the health budgeting you have talked about, it should, go up. There's no comparison, in fact, 1.8 and, 16.9 USA, you have suggested. So this is a developed country and it's an underdeveloped country with such huge population. It's difficult. You have, prescribed, use of technology, to mitigate these challenges. That's a very good suggestion. But we are actually facing certain issues with regard to use of technology in education in these days of pandemic, when we have completely switched over to technologically enabled platforms where education is being delivered. And we have seen the pros and cons of how much education, what quality education can be actually delivered through digital platform. Uh, you have focused on job oriented skill education. Yes, that's fine. but at the same time, little bit, critical input I would like to give, that we have to also give importance to non-skilled, technical education, where the real meaning of education is, the defined in different other sense, liberal art, history, language, philosophy. All these have very important role to play in the making of a citizen, and at the school and college level, these are very important, because if we want to create a healthy nation, we have to focus in a balanced way on both skill and the other types of education. So uh, yes, you have even spoken about the role of social media to spread gender sensitization and all those things. Yes, that's a very, very big problem in our country today. So more focus on quantity and less focus on quality would take us to a very difficult situation, where it will be difficult for us to manage the kind of situation we are confronting with today. So I'll just briefly take you to the to another sphere, where you can reflect on some other points, which probably due to paucity of time or your focus on the other aspects you have missed out. This would be like a perspective of a social scientist, and as a student of political science, I will start from the political approach to the issue of population. So as I told in the beginning, that that in political science we teach the first lesson to our students the concept of state. And in that, we tell them that there are four important elements of state: uh, government, territory, sovereignty, and last is population. Not in that order strictly, but population is a very, very important element of state. So from there, population gets linked to the political domain. So the responsibility of protecting the population and creating enabling environment for their growth and prosperity lies with the state. So here the political element comes in. And once the political element comes in, then population as an issue or a factor has to be seen in different ways. And I see demography as a key element of national power. I mean, what kind of a population you have determines your national power. If you have a very healthy population, working population, productive population, then it will add to your national power and the state becomes powerful at the international level. But if it is not so, then it becomes a liability for you, both economically, socially, and politically. So therefore, here you have to situate population in the larger context of social, political, and economic domain. And in each domain, you will find the various dynamics playing out differently and resulting in different ways, whether it is demographic dividend or demographic liability. You'll have to look at there. For example, if we talk about the social context or the social environment, there you will have two types of population. Okay, as a nation, it could be either a homogeneous population or a heterogeneous population. So there, all problems, either problem or your success, everything comes out of that. For example, if it is a homogeneous population, then a lot of your problems are taken care of automatically. If it is a heterogeneous population, then see what kind of a problem we are facing today in terms of religion, caste, creed, language, race. India is such a heterogeneous country. And to manage this heterogeneous population, you need to have a multidimensional approach, both public policy, in terms of public policy, as well as in the overall narrative which you create in the social world, and the kind of historical legacy you have. All those have reflections on your population. So what happened in 1947 has its repercussions and influence on our population till today. So there is this whole communal divide, the history of which Manish will bail me out. The legacy of this communal divide comes from there. So the population today is seen to be divided, or polarized and used by politicians, political parties, and for that matter the state, the whole narrative of state politics and all that. So Paul, I'm all taking you to an entirely different side of the question of population, which you can reflect on. And in a in comparison to the kind of situation we are facing in terms of our heterogeneous population, some Western countries, European countries are homogeneous, but America is not so much homogeneous. It's a country, Canada, America, and in North America, those countries are multicultural. So diversity is there, but then it is managed quite well. So why not we, as we are also democracies, but we are not able to manage our diversity so well, and we are getting entrapped in these narratives, bipolarity, or polarized politics and all that. So we have to look at that also angle, that how we manage our diversity. So that diversity is very much intrinsic part of our population. So where there is a homogeneous population, there the unity is more, the national power therefore gets enhanced. Therefore we see the European countries, the countries which are homogeneous, religious, in terms of religion and all that, they have found it easier. The nation building process, national integration, national unity is found to be more easier to achieve, and they have therefore achieved that. Then the economic part is the most important, as you have mentioned about Malthus and all, and the impact of the factor called population on economic development is it's a two-side affair. You have both good and bad. Population can be a dividend, it can be a huge liability. You have mostly focused on the prospect of India's growing population to be very bright and coming would be in future will be proved to be a dividend for us, for our country, in terms of economic prosperity and all that. But at the same time, we cannot lose sight of the fact that this huge population, I would say it's a population explosion, has not been properly managed in a way that we find today that there is lopsided development. And there are parts of this country which are lagging far behind, where the population density is very high, but they are poor, underdeveloped. They have mineral resources and all those natural resources, but they do not have the kind of development and prosperity which the rest of the country has witnessed. And there we have to see what kind of role the political elites are playing, what is the political interest or the economic interest, where the money is going and all that. So population has a problem there. So that problem gets translated into discontent and a disaffection against the state, leading to problems like separatism, militancy, and whatnot. So that's a threat to national security also. So the population, growing population is not always something which a country should be very, very proud of. It should be a working, productive force which will be positively contributing towards the GDP of the country, of the economy. So And so many points came flooding into my mind, but there's a very little time. I was even talking about, because I'm a student of IR, and my specialization is in global politics, foreign policy. I was also thinking about how the population is important insofar as your military strategies are concerned, your national security is concerned. We are a nuclear power. Our nuclear doctrine has kept this in mind, that we are a heavily dense you have a dense population in this subcontinent, and we cannot afford to be lackadaisical in our planning towards ensuring national security. So population comes into our mind in the policy making stage, where we have to think 10 times before indulging in any kind of proactive nuclear policy towards any of our neighbors, because we cannot afford. Because if there is an accidental nuclear war, it's going to devastate the entire North India. So it's a very heavily populated place. So population that way is factored into your public policy making, foreign policy making, so on and so forth. Anyway, there are so many other things to talk about, but time is less, and I'll catch up with Prachi one-to-one after this, and we'll discuss more about it. And again, thank you very much. I'm deeply indebted to Manish and the team, Saksha, for inviting me. And Manish was profusely apologizing last time for not having been able to give me an opportunity to speak, because I was there in Anjali's presentation, and I found it very, very interesting. And then Manish spoke to me, and he was apologizing, but I can understand. This is a platform for students, and teachers should talk less here. But since you invited me as a guest of honor, and you gave me the platform, I took your valuable time so much. Thank you very much. All the best.
And sir, it's not only the Prachi. I'll also invite in my department also to interact with my students.
Yes, definitely, any
Yes.
day. All these,
Yes.
during this pandemic, I have done maximum, academic interaction with my students. This is the time I thought
Definitely, sir.
they need they needed us the most, and that is how. And I find this to be a great opportunity for me also to interact with so many students. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
So, in the continuity of the series of the knowledgeable sessions of GSTS, for the next talk, that is the 55th talk of the GSTS, I now wish to invite Ms. Chandni to provide a brief outline of her insightful topic. So, Ms. Chandni, you may please go ahead.
Thank you, Samriddhi, and thank you, Prachi, for that excellent presentation. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chandni Jaswal. I'm a final year history honors student at the Meher Chand Mahajan Devi College for Women, Punjab University, Chandigarh, and a core team member of Karma, the Heritage Exploration Initiative. Next week, that is on 27th February 2022, to celebrate Black History Month, I will be speaking on the civil rights movement that took place in America in the 1950s and 60s, but was actually the result of centuries of oppression. Indian history, as in Hamari history, has been celebrated, discussed by everyone in the world. But I believe that the real purpose of studying history is to learn lessons from it, to know what one should do and what one should not do. Those lessons, I believe, can only be imbibed if we read the history of the entire world. So, for the next 1 hour of my talk, I hope to shift our focus on the struggles of one such community, the Blacks, the African Americans, right from the 1600s when they were so disrespectfully brought to the American shores, to the 20th century movement that they had for the right to speak and the right to be treated as equals, to the 2008 watershed movement of when the first African American president is sworn in, and finally to the Black Lives Matter movement, which has taken the world by storm. This presentation will be more of a virtual exhibition. There are pictures, audio clips, video clips, posters, and I hope the purpose of this presentation is to evoke our sympathies and interests in the struggles of those other than ourselves. Because I believe that every nation, every community, every citizen has their own struggle and success story. So I hope that you join me for the next, that is the 55th Graduate Scholar Talk. Thank you so much to the team for this opportunity, and thank you so much for listening to me. I hope to see you next week. Thank you.